Tick, 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 tick. Okay, we might get started. Welcome everybody. There's a few yet to join us from over at the all-important bar, and there are a couple of seats up the back here on your left-hand side as you come in. Welcome everybody. My name is Jonathan Jones. I'm the Education and Training Director at the Sydney School of Entrepreneurship. It's fantastic to be here in Wagga for the event today. I'll be emceeing the event, and I'd just like to reference and say my thank yous to the various parties that have collaborated to bring this event together. And that's the City of Sydney Visiting Entrepreneurs Program, Spark Festival, of which this event is part, the Sydney School of Entrepreneurship, and of course Charles Sturt University, and the fantastic venue that we find ourselves in today, Food I Am. A few special mentions. I'd like to welcome Councillor Rod Kendall, who I met a little earlier, who's attending on behalf of the Mayor. Also Professor of Entrepreneurship Morgan Miles, Professor of Agricultural Business Management David Fallopao, and Victoria Moxie from the City of Sydney. And also a really big welcome to the local businesses, the local producers and the local entrepreneurs who have joined us for the event today. We are streaming live, so there are a number of registrations from across the state, and we have registrations from Tumut, from Dubbo, from Sydney, and of course from Armidale as well. And a very special mention to Simone Isles, a Wagga entrepreneurial guru, I'm told, who is joining us from Canberra. A few apologies. Dr. Joe McGeer, MP, was unable to join us this afternoon, and also I've received apologies from Aaron McDonald, who's the acting head of campus for Charles Sturt University. In recognition of the land in which we stand today, I'd like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people, who are the traditional custodians of the land, and also to pay respect to the people, their people both past and present, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal Australians who are present today. In a few moments, we'll hear from Mark Brand. Now, for those of you who have not read up on Mark before this event, Mark hails from Vancouver, Canada, and is one of North America's foremost social entrepreneurs. He's got 11 businesses under his belt, and we'll hear about a few of those businesses today. And he's really an example of a new form of leadership that encompasses good and social cause in all that's done. It's through his cooking, philanthropic efforts, systems design, and a love for the community that he's found a unique balance in both business and purpose. It's really great to have a food-based entrepreneur presenting to us in such a food-based location, both in terms of what's produced, but also this fantastic Food I Am venue. I'm really looking forward to hearing what he has to say, so please put your hands together for Mark Brand.
I believe that food is the conduit to love and to show people that we really deeply care about them and their success, and that every time we do the opposite, it is the opposite. It's disrespecting people. When you live that, even if it's briefly, it affects you forever. Because when you are in that, it's the loneliest place in the world, but also you feel like everybody thinks you're garbage. I want to be that person that's there for somebody else when this comes into that place. I want to build an entire structure that's ready to help people. When I was looking at traditional meal programs that were being served by government and by other folks all across North America, I was nothing short of disgusted. It was really upsetting because the metric of success is how many people you can feed, not how many people you can feed well. Somebody says, hey, can I have some money because I'm hungry? Which happens all day, every day in every city that we know of. Most people ignore them, most people won't talk to them. So instead of pretending that that's not a thing, that people don't ignore and they don't give money, I just asked everybody why they don't give money. And they said, I don't give money because I don't trust people with it that I think they'll use for drugs or alcohol. Now that bias sucks, but it's real. So we have to address it as real. Just says sandwich. It's only redeemable for a sandwich. You can't trade it for cash. It's not worth any drugs. What I was most excited about is that you would hand it to somebody. So yes, I'm excited that you're gonna get a sandwich. Great. You're hungry, you have a place of inclusion you can go to. That's really cool. I'm way more excited that you're going to talk to somebody who's feeling super isolated and street entrenched. When I had done my second bout where I was unhoused, I was living with my best friend at the time in East Vancouver, I fell to addiction to drugs and alcohol. And in that time, I used to go to a place called Save on Meats that had been there since 1957. And I'd sit at the counter and I'd eat a burger for like $3.50 and I'd get really full. But I ate there because I didn't have a lot of resource. And I also felt a lot of judgment at the time, as you do when you're battling with addiction. And in that space were cops, cons, everybody in between. And it was one of those rare places where that occurs in this day and age. We employ people that have physical disabilities, mental disabilities, traditional other barriers, and that being a rap sheet. Somebody's made bad decisions in their life, I've made a bunch of them, and I've worked my way out of them. We don't look at any of that as a hindrance, we look at it as a diverse ability or something that you could actually bring to the job that's more important. Homelessness is a symptom. Poverty is what I care about. We have more than enough resources, times 100, to fix all of these things. They're just going to the wrong places. We just have to be smarter. We just have to.
Now we're going to run it twice, and then I'm going to leave. I hope you enjoyed it. It's great. Share with your friends. Please put it on Facebook with kind words. Afternoon. How you guys doing? I don't know. My ears popped in the plane. How you guys doing? There we go. We're into it. I'm going to teach you the most single important lesson in business and in life that I've ever learned. And I have opened 11 businesses, 13 cost centers. I ran a business that was $17 million in revenue with a bunch of friends and yahoos who had no business running them. In all of that time, I learned a lot of things. Best business school is opening a business. Don't let anybody tell you different. That's one. Two is this. This is the single most important thing you can do. Anytime you think that you're going to get into a Barney with one of your partners, a customer is giving you rough time, or you just simply feel exhausted, it's just this. I know that seems kind of crazy, right? For those of you who don't meditate already, don't worry. This isn't going to be a Burning Man session, I promise you. Unless that's what we want to do, and then we can do that. No, it's not going to be that. But I would like you to engage me in a couple of things. First thing is, does anybody know what Chatham House rules are? Great. So those of you that don't, this is a place of safety. We're going to talk about some stuff today, and we need to be very comfortable to say whatever it is that's on our mind and what we want without fear of judgment. Can we agree to that? Cool. Second, that we are for each other. Everybody get what I'm saying when I say that? That we are not in judgment of each other, but we're for each other. You can be in judgment of me because I'm up here performing, but everybody else, we are for each other. I need you to be for me too. And the third part is I'm just going to bring us all into the room real quick. So we're going to close our eyes. That made you really uncomfortable, right? I get it. I've been there. It's a long journey. We're going to close our eyes, and please don't cut yourself, sir. For real this time. Let's close our eyes. I'm going to take a deep breath of 8 in, just a nice big count, all the way out. We're going to do it again, and when we're doing it, just let everything that you brought with you here out. It's gone. You can pick it back up in an hour, 2 hours, maybe 5. Depends on how much you have to drink. In again. And then out, and just feel into your body and your fingers and your toes and your head. We are miracles. It's kind of crazy we're allowed to operate these things. And then one more time. All right. So you should feel significantly different. And if you don't, then my hypothesis is blown and the talk is over. But you do. That tool will save you lawsuits. It will save you relationships. It will save you everything. So let me just start there. I get a chance to talk to a lot of people. And I'm very mindful of what those audiences want, need. And I was up in a place called Kelowna, which is about the same distance this is from Sydney, from Vancouver, British Columbia. It's a beautiful area. It was a real estate conference of all things, because who's the foremost expert in real estate? Sometimes I wonder. But they brought me up, and I was having a particularly tough week. We were battling 2 lawsuits at the time, and I wasn't feeling up. I was feeling pretty low. I was walking through the streets in Kelowna, and I ran into this guy. And as I do often, I speak to people in the street and just figure out what their situation is and what's it like to be homeless in Kelowna? What's it like to be street entrenched up here? So this guy's name, Michael, we were chatting, and he'd been street entrenched for almost 13 years. He's from Montreal, and he had his cart and his belongings with him. And he's like, "How are you doing?" I was like, "I'm not doing very good." I start telling him why I'm not doing very good, and get me a microphone, right? Telling him for a while, and he's listening, like super intently listening. He starts to give me some advice. I thank him. I'm like, "Hey, can I get you dinner?" He's like, "Nah, I already ate, man. I'm good. But I got something for you." And he reaches back into his cart, and he pulls this out. And he says to me straight, like dead in the eyes, "It doesn't get easier, you just get stronger." And it just, like, get goosebumps every time I say it still, because it hit me so hard, the situation that we were in. I'm going back to my beautiful hotel to talk to people who are very wealthy. And Michael is at home in the street, yet intently listened to every word I had to say, offered me some advice, and then left me a parting piece. And on top of that, gave me a way to open keynotes for years after. We have this barrier that we put in these preconceived notions and this narrative that we've created about people who are less than. And it just isn't real. There is no us and them, there's just us. There's no in between. Gender, color, status, none of it matters. In the situation that we're in on this planet right now, if there isn't more Michaels, we're in a lot of trouble. So I ask you to carry this guy with you. And he helped me start to look at an exploration of what courage means in 2018. What's it mean to be courageous? We spend a lot of time being heroes on the internet, telling people what we think in 2018. There's a lot of that courage, a lot of Dutch courage, a couple of drinks and speak your mind. But what's it look like to be courageous every day? And where it landed for me was to stand for others. So that's what courage really looks like. So in a place where we're so divided, people have so many opinions, and they have a lot of opinions because, truthfully, we're in a lot of trauma right now. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world where we're like, oh my God, are we going to be underwater? And I can't believe somebody else had, and there's another mass shooting. And all this stuff is going on. But amongst it, if we hold this true and practice it, when we see something, when we're in a situation where you're like, that was offside. Luckily, I learned a lot of this stuff from my 9 years in Melbourne. Australians, not known to hold their tongues. Canadians, a little more polite. It was a rough re-entry back into Canada, let me tell you, after 9 years in Melbourne. But this is super important. So it's just something else I wanted to table as we started. Now, we're going to be working together, if that wasn't already abundantly clear. This isn't just the me show, although I'll be leading it. The question I want to ask you all right now is this. All right? And the importance of this is we're all mirrors. So if I'm in a conversation with Councilman just before, and we're having this really great chat, I love how he's talking about this place. And I'm watching him talk about it, and it's with enthusiasm, and he's been here since he was 7 or 8 years old. These are the top 3 projects we're working on. The river project's going to be amazing. There's some diversion in the crowd energetically right now, so I hope they believe you. But I'm looking at him going, damn, that's what leadership looks like. We mirror constantly, right? We're always looking at each other and going, the opposite also happens. When we see stuff we don't like, a lot of the time it's because we do it. All right? We're like, oh, that guy is the most obnoxious. I can't believe it. All he ever does is hog the mic. Sounds familiar. So when you think about who inspires you and why, you think about the traits that you aspire to be. And a lot of people immediately, I used to ask this question, they'd be like, Mahatma Gandhi, Muhammad Ali, Michael Jordan. I'm like, those are great examples, but that's not at all what I'm talking about, because you don't know those people. Or maybe you do, and if you do, tell me a story. but chances are you don't. Who are the people in your life? Now, as I've said all of that, has anybody got one that popped right to the top of their mind? Yes, you do. Let me hand you the microphone. Is this a dangerous thing because you're laughing? Okay, no, we're good?
I try not to sweat. I really like Kerwin Ray, and I know him personally as well. So he's super... Why? He's blunt, direct, no bullshit, very honest, very successful, confident in himself, humble too.
Those are all traits I think we all want. Anybody else? Yeah? Okay, I'm coming to you. I'm going to be mindful not to kick this monitor over, and if I do, I hope I don't have to pay for it.
Thank you. Anna. My babushka, she came to this country with very little and created a whole life here, learned a new language, made plenty of friends, always had people over that she thought were less fortunate than her, and food was a big thing to her, and it didn't seem to matter how little she had in other people's eyes. She always had plenty to give, and she was a cool chick. Yeah, I wish she was still here, but she's up there.
Thank you for sharing. That resonate for anybody? You're like, yeah, I want to meet her grandma too. Yeah, hospitality, care. They're all things that we aspire to be, right? You want to be that person that wants to have people over, but man, I couldn't be bothered a lot of the time. I got to be honest with you. Until they get there. And then I'm super excited, right? We've got these traps that we live in right now because social media has got us in a place. And that place is that we think that's real and it's just not. So we're going to talk a little bit about that too, but thank you both for sharing. I appreciate you. This is my inspiration. I opened my first restaurant in 2006 named Bonita after my mom, just here on my neck as well, in case you wanted to pronounce it later and get it wrong. That really upsets me, even though the tattoo artist wasn't the best, so it could be easily misdiagnosed. I opened the restaurant in one of the largest open-air drug markets in the world called the Downtown East Side, one of the densest areas of homelessness. You just saw it. You just got to hang out in my neighborhood for 3 minutes. It is my favorite place on the planet. And one of the reasons it's my favorite place is because it's no bullshit. When you get to a certain state, you just are. When things are stripped away from you, you just are. Right? And you stop living with any of the masks or veils. It's over. So sometimes that's a wonderful thing. Sometimes it's not so great. But in this neighborhood, when I was opening this restaurant, I'd work every day and I'd see this guy. And I had no idea. A couple of things would always come to my mind. Who pays this guy? I'm a systems guy. I'm like, who's writing the paycheck for this guy to clean up 7 days a week, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m.? It's crazy. And he doesn't have any city markings, and he's actually kind of scary looking, and he doesn't talk to anybody. So my curiosity was piqued, right? Of course, I'm like, what's this guy's story? And we shared space. We shared community. We're on the same blocks every single day. And to be very frank, when I first started working in the neighborhood, unless I'd had a bunch to drink, I didn't talk to people who were marginalized. And then, of course, you get the little bit of hero in you, and you're like, how you doing? What's going on? But outside of that, I wouldn't. And I'd find myself crossing the street or faking a phone call when I saw somebody who was marginalized or homeless, with a deep fear that they would ask me for something I couldn't give them. And I didn't have words for that then. I was like, why don't I do this? And it was my ego. Because your ego is ultimately scared that you're going to disappoint yourself, right? So it keeps you safe. Like, don't go talk to that person, because if they ask you something, you're going to feel bad. And God forbid you feel bad. Thing about that is that's also a fallacy. If somebody asks you for something you can't give them, you just say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. But at least you've spoken to them. And you don't have to carry that around. They don't have to carry it around. And they've been seen. It's nice to be seen when 100 people ignore you in a row. It's important work. So Mike left me no choice one morning. Walked out of my apartment crazy early, super groggy. Looked across the street, and he was laying on the ground. I was like, oh, no, that dude's dead. I was like, what do I do? What do I do? And he moved slightly. I was like, yeah, sorry, he's alive. And I got the courage up, and I walked across the street, and I kneeled down. I was like, hey, man, are you okay? And he looked straight up at me, and he went, no. I was like, I knew that. That's why I'm here. And I was like, do you want a coffee? My restaurant? He's like, I know exactly who you are. I see you every day. I'm like, I know, this is what I'm trying to say. And then he said, no, I don't want a coffee. Do you have beer? And we became really fast friends. It was 9 a.m. So he rolled in for a pint and started talking, and his situation unveiled to me. He'd struggled really hard his whole life. He got done for doing bad checks when he was 19 back in the day with a crew, got locked up for fraud, never really hurt anybody except his local publican, and then spent 30 years in and out of jail because of it. So reoffend. Once you're in the system, you're in the system in North America and, well, here. So we're conversing. I'm like, so what's your story? What do you do now? He's like, I work every day. I'm like, I can see that. What happened? Why were you on the street? I've never seen you anything but perfectly put together. And he said, I had to leave my apartment. And so he was living in what's known as an SRO, or a single room occupancy, or an outside of jail 8x10, as I like to say. Shared bathrooms, not very nice. Some of them are beautiful, but those are just the ones that we show the public. The one he was living in, not so much, and it got infested with bed bugs. And Mike has Asperger's, OCD, ADD, heroin addiction, and methamphetamine addiction. That cocktail and bed bugs, not so much. So he left and got in a huge blue with the desk guy on the way out, as he was known to do when we first met because of all of his time in jail. Hated authority. So we keep talking, and I'm like, well, let's just go get your stuff. I go immediately into solve mode, right? That's what we do. We go into solution because the ego is freaking out. It's like, oh no, this is the moment that you were scared of. Now you're going to have to do something. I was like, okay, I got this. Let's go get your stuff. We'll get it laundered. I know the high temp laundry down the road where everybody else gets their stuff. He's like, yeah, no, my stuff's gone. I'm like, what happened? He's like, I didn't go back fast enough because I argued with the guy and they incinerated it all. I was like, oh, shit. Okay, well, that's fine. No problem. Still in solve mode. Ego's freaking out even more. There's a place across the street. We can just go shopping. You look like a medium. We'll get you some boots. What are you, a size 8? No problem. Let's just do all this. We'll buy it all. It's fine. He's like, I appreciate that, but that's not why I'm upset. I was like, continued to prod, try to get to the solution. He was like, in those belongings were all the pictures of my family. And that was it for me. Sometimes you don't have a response, and that's also okay. Just to be with somebody else, right? Just to be in their presence. And that day I hired Mike. He started working for me. That was 2006. He retired last year. Happy to say that he got into methadone about 2 years afterwards and is clean and sober. He's a proud grandfather to 6 children, as in doesn't need the pictures of his family anymore because he sees them every day. And he also models on the side. Handsome bastard. Excuse the overexposure on the screen. It looks like we've all been like on the blister of the sun. This is the other guy that inspires me. This is Al Delorier. When I mentioned the second bout of being unhoused. You know, there's a plethora of things that go along with homelessness. There's people who live in their cars, they live in vans, they couch surf. They're all one step away from street entrenchment. We don't want anybody street entrenched. Because once you're in there, it's real hard to get you out. Real hard. This guy, as you can tell by sort of the wear on the building, if you can see a little bit, this was sort of the last bastion of the original downtown of Vancouver, British Columbia. Used to be all neon, it was beautiful. This was the downtown. And this guy, as a 13-year-old boy, stood across the street from a tent and awning shop and said, I'm going to own that building one day, to his best friend. About 7 years later, he started to work there. Shortly after, he did own the building. And for 57 years, he operated the most inclusive place in Vancouver, even though he didn't know what that meant. He was just a nice dude. He looked after everybody in his community. And as a community, the wars ended, people got addicted to heroin, crack cocaine entered, devastated the neighborhood. Everybody moved away from the neighborhood because better to move away than to fix it. Left the problems, left Al. So Al, when I was battling with addiction, I would go in there and sit at the back diner counter. The woman just behind him is his amazing wife. And sit there and not feel judged. I was like, okay, I'm good here, I'm safe here. And I would watch him operate. Similar way that I would fast forward and watch Mike operate. I'm a systems guy. And I watch people come in, and I watch this one dude walk in and just slap all this change on the stainless steel counter really loudly. And Al, just calm as a cucumber. He's about this tall, by the way. But he's about this big. Just reached into the counter and knew what the guy wanted, sorted him out, took the change, wished him a wonderful day. I saw him lend money to people all the time, and I was like, man, he's never getting that money back. I've lent money in these streets. Found out later, I was like, hey, how often do you not get paid back? He's like, not get paid back? Like a mob boss, right? Like, what do you mean? The level of respect he had in the streets and in the neighborhood was unparalleled. So after I'd gotten myself right, opened one business, opened 8 more, because I'm a masochist. And as we were renovating one, building 2, and way over leveraged, Al decided he was going to retire. So he walked into my shop one day. He was like, hey, yeah, I'm gonna call it a day. It's like, okay, that's crazy. That can't happen. Like the neighborhood, food security, et cetera. He's like, yeah, I know, right? It's like, so what are you going to do? And he's like, well, I'm not going to sell the building unless somebody agrees to take it over. I was like, nobody's that crazy. He's like, I got some ideas. So long story short, we worked a deal, and I took over 21,000 square feet in the downtown east side and hacked it into a place of inclusion and employment model, et cetera, et cetera. This was my butcher shop. Now, I said I did a lot of business. I didn't say I was always good at it. Has anybody been to a butcher shop? Show of hands. Anybody seen one this big before? Yeah, in the rural markets where there's a l'abattoir. This is downtown. There's 2,800 square feet of butcher case here. It's a little much. We made a lot of mistakes is where I'm going with this. I had a lot of assumptions. I'd never run a butcher shop. I never worked in a butcher shop. I know how to break down an animal. I'm a chef. But that's about as far as that goes. So I was like, well, we'll keep the original case because everybody cares about that. No, they didn't. What we did end up doing is chopping it to about this size now. It's 18 seats, and that whole thing is a kitchen that feeds about 1,200 people a day. When you're in business and you know that you've made a mistake, letting go of that mistake as quick as humanly possible is the play. Pivot, 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 pivot. We get caught in this narrative that means failure. It doesn't. Nobody cares. No, literally nobody cares. You're like, oh my God, what are people going to think when I change the butcher shop? There's going to be this big coup and people are going to think. That's that ego again. Nobody gives a shit about your butcher shop. Change it to solve things for you and for business. The single biggest killer of the restaurant business is this is the menu we started with, this is what we do, and not pivoting. 95% will close in 5 years. That's crazy. It's also an insanely difficult business. This was another assumption I made. A super good one. This is a counter right here that faces right onto the street. There's a roller gate. I thought the community would have a hard time adjusting to me being the new owner of Save On Meats. It's like, damn, it's important to me to service these folks. I want to make sure that they know we're for them, and if they have barriers and mental illness and these issues, they don't want to come inside, they don't have to. They can just get a sandwich from outside. We started the token program here. After a while, I was like, I wonder if anybody, really uses this window. Not a lot of people were, first of all. And secondly, I think the most important part is the day we opened, on this side is one entrance, on that side's another entrance, and this used to be a display window. I was terrified. I'm like, is anybody going to show up from this community? And the roller doors were down. We were shooting a reality show at the time. There's cameras inside. The roller doors went up, and the place got flooded. And I'm standing there waiting to greet everybody, and it was like a Looney Tunes cartoon. They just stomped past me and went right in. I made the assumption that anybody even knew I was opening it, let alone cared. And they didn't at all because it was their place, not mine. When you're working with institution, you got to make sure they remove your ego from that too. So, back to this courage thing. When you're intending to do good, it's wonderful. And you can follow the old channels that people do. Charity has not been our biggest success. There's ways to solve the issues that we have, but we've got to be smarter. So when you step outside and you start to challenge things, that's the courage that I'm talking about next, is the courage to step into innovation. Now, let me just go ahead and define innovation, because it does not mean going to Mars. It doesn't mean virtual reality, augmented reality, biotech, or any of that stuff. It does not mean that. Innovation means looking at something differently, piecing together other systems that already exist, and working with them. This is a social impact innovation. No, it's a poker chip. No, it's an innovation. Why is it an innovation? Because of the 5 systems I combined that it works with. 1, it employs people who are disabled, disadvantaged to create the program. 2, it removes money almost entirely from the conversation, which is important, and that's a key differentiator, and that's part of the design thinking methodology around what is the actual pain point here. So when you innovate, something hits you. You have a lightning strike, right? You're like, oh my God, why has nobody thought about a dog sled that you pull behind you with wheels? So I don't have to drag my dog. This would be the best, right? You have this moment. Then what you do is you start to ask people before you order 1,000 of those things from China. You're like, hold on, does anybody want a dog sled but me? It's really important to ask. Has anybody got a credit card that I could borrow for a second? Also, I appreciate the plethora of beverages. It's a black card. Damn, all right. Anybody got a square that we could give this a quick swipe with? Okay, so I got invited to do some consultation with a man and son who'd been working on a project to do an informal currency in the downtown east side. And the idea was, it'd be $20 on this card, and you could redeem it anywhere in the neighborhood you wanted. Clothes, food, and they wanted me to be a vendor, but they also wanted to test the idea. All right? So they invited me in. They sat me down. They're like, thank you for coming. There's coffee. This is our project. And I picked it up, and I looked at it and went, how long have you been working on this? They're like 2.5 years, like left our jobs, got really serious about it, created it, worked on the branding, talked to a whole bunch of people. They're really excited to help people who are homeless. Everybody's looking for a way to do it. And I was like, cool, did you speak to anybody who's homeless? And they were like, well, yeah, of course, yeah, right? You did, right? You did? Yeah, of course we did. I was like, cool. Let me tell you a story. So every Christmas, people from business come down with stacks of $20 gift cards from Starbucks and McDonald's and other places because they really want to help out and they want people to be excited. And they are excited to take that $20 gift card and hand it directly to their drug dealer and take $5 of narcotics. And that drug dealer then sells it to me the next day for 10 to 15. And nobody eats. And they're like, that's crazy. I was like, no, we could step out and you could watch it happen right now if you want. But you never asked anybody. And you didn't do the research. All you got to do, you know what the cheapest thing in the world to do is ask people, by the way. It's free. People love to tell you what they think. But you can also witness it. You can watch people and their interactions. Living in the informal economy of the downtown east side, that's $1 million a day drug market, it's fair enough that some kind of money must pass through it. And that's by any means necessary when you're an addict. So they were really upset with me. Really upset. They were like, bye, thanks for coming. You can go now. So I left, and then I was really upset. Because I was like, what a waste of 30 months. All you had to do was take a day and talk to somebody, but you proved one side of your assumption, therefore you thought it was a good idea. But you got to prove all sides. Otherwise, you're doing it wrong. So the thing about saying things like that is that they're not very popular all the time. And when we launched our token project, it got an incredible amount of attention. We were the front page of every paper. We did every show coast to coast. We got flown to radio stuff. It was really fun. But I had only had a half-baked idea, right? Because I woke up at 3 in the morning after getting kicked out of there, called my designer and said, I need you to make me a poker chip with a pig on one side and sandwich on the other. Can you do that? And he's like, if you can stop texting me at 3 a.m., I can do whatever you need. I was like, that's never going to happen, so make the token. Next week, we had 2,000 printed. I thought we'd do 2 or 3 a day, right? I was like, well, that'd be amazing. You heard me say earlier, well, the first day we did 120. We've done 110,000 redemptions. Now, Vancouver's big. Well, it's not that big. It's about 380,000 people live downtown. 110 times 2. A lot of people have been involved. Our redemption rate's about 98%. But one of the things that people picked up on the other side was, how dare you tell me what I should do with my money, 1. 2, how dare you take money away from people who are already living in the street. They have their own agency and they can make their own decisions. I was like, both of those things are correct. The flip side of that is everybody I spoke to won't give money, therefore there's no decision to be made. So we got in a lot of arguments. And those arguments were great because I learned a ton out of it too, that I'd poked a wound that I had no idea that was there. And that is a lot of guilt and a lot of anger. So one of those angry things happened. I was working on building a live music venue. I was super excited about it. And I was sitting with my builders and contractors, and my phone went off. I was like, excuse me for a second, sorry. And it was a television personality who ran a breakfast show. His name's Riaz. And he said, "Are you okay?" All in capital letters. I looked at it. I'm fine, you? Buzz, buzz. Picked it up. And it just said anarchists in capital letters with exclamation points and question marks. I was like, anarchists? I just texted back, have you been drinking? He's like, no, I need you in the studio first thing tomorrow morning and check your email. In my email was a picture of these two. I don't know if you can see them both. There's a guy with the Nixon pose here and his balaclava. Looks deadly, right? Dangerous. And then down here, you've got his mate. Super sneaky. These are his little eye holes down here, also in a balaclava, ready to cause mayhem and mischief. And they stole that sandwich board and sent me a letter that said, we are going to systemically disassemble all of your businesses and attack you and your staff until you leave the neighborhood. I was like, whoa. And it was much more pointed than that, and I've left the expletives out because you don't need to hear them. Also, they weren't real. So I'd been threatened a lot. I'd been threatened online. It was totally fine. I'm easy to find. I was in my streets every day. There's a lot of just internet hero stuff. The problem with this statement was your staff. Nobody had ever threatened my staff before, and I didn't deal with it very well. So in a rage, I flew up to my office and said, well, we know a lot of people in the street who owe us a lot of favors. Let's find our sandwich board. And everybody's like, nope, we're just not doing that. That is not how we're going to answer this, because this is going to set the tone for how you answer all of this going forward. And is that the guy you want to be? You want to be the bully? You want to be the tough guy? I was like, not really. They're like, cool. Well, then let's talk about what we should do. And my team poured me 4 fingers of whiskey when I used to still drink. And I put that back pretty quick, and we started to talk about what it could look like. And instead, we built this. So I know it's a little challenging for you to see, so I'm going to outline it for you. Here's the fingers and the face. And then this is the little fella. If you're feeling brave, you can lay down and stick your face in there, too. That's Steve. There's the anarchists. Steve, anarchists, and Steve, and the rest of Vancouver. So instead, we said, hey, we've lost our sandwich board. We built a new one. We think it's great. We'd love you to come play anarchist. And if you'd like to, every time you put it on the internet, we'll buy a meal for the women's shelter at the Rainier Hotel that's recently lost its federal funding. 4,000 people later, in a week, everybody was feeling pretty good about themselves. Me included. Nobody got in a blue. I never got my sign back. I think it's in the political science department of the University of British Columbia, but that's just a hunch. And it was an opportunity. It was an opportunity to take that energy, like some sort of Tai Chi master, and instead of getting angry about it, which is what they wanted me to do and look like an idiot, which I can do all on my own, we looked at it as an opportunity. And to do the right thing. So, about that mirror, when we react, if somebody's really mad at us, instead of going to the defense immediately and being like, this is why you shouldn't be mad at me and pleading your case, whereas they continue to plead their case to you of why you're an idiot, and then you tell them why you're an idiot, it's kind of a waste of everybody's time. So instead, what I started to do after this thing, when people would get mad at me, would go, I'd love to hear more about it, and I'd like to buy you a coffee. Would you sit with me and tell me what we're doing wrong? Because you bring a great depth of experience to this that I don't have. And almost every single person I invited to do that since has taken me up on it and taught me an immense amount about systems, about trauma, about bias. And it's free. Coffee is like 20 cents. But that conversation and that openness changes the narrative around the problem. It's like, I don't pretend to know, I'm just trying to do a good job. And that's different than I will find you and get my sandwich board back, which is just a fucking sandwich board. Nobody cares. So we're constantly trying to open dialogue with people all the time. The video I'm about to show you is an opportunity. Who is involved in tech here in the room at all, or technology, or cares about technology? All right, so imagine if, this is my Steve Jobs moment, tell me how I do. Imagine if, instead of us assuming all the data around homelessness, everybody had a phone. Imagine if they did. You don't have to imagine, I've done the research, everybody does. Secondly, imagine if they were smartphones and they could share with us what was actually wrong and how it could help them. $8.2 billion was spent in the state of California 2016, sorry. 8.2 billion with a B on homelessness and poverty. And the problem got worse. The problem got worse, duplicity of services, everybody trying to do the right thing but not figuring out how, because you're literally shooting in the dark. The only way that we count homelessness is with an actual clipboard. This is so crazy. This could be the room. We could be doing the homeless count in Sydney. And you'd come in and I'd be like, okay, so this is important. Don't talk to anybody. And I'm just gonna need you to tick. You're gonna get an area. You got little Collins to little Burke. And I'm gonna need you to tick people, families, single women, single men. And then we're gonna aggregate the number, and that's how we're gonna fund the programs. I'm not joking. It's 2018, that's how we do it. I'm pretty sure I've been part of the count. I wear a lot of hoodies. And I've rode along to 7 different ones. And it's insanity. And it's how we fund everything. This is what I think we should do. At one point, something had struck for me, sort of like a lightning rod, and it was like, we have to start to work to help our neighbors. I created this plastic chip. You could carry this in your pocket, and if somebody said, I'm hungry, I need help, you could hand it to them and that they could come into my diner or butcher and redeem it for a sandwich. The goal was to feed as many people as possible. One of the biggest tensions I have is data. And how can I get trusted, collated data that I can aggregate from all sorts of sources with unlimited users that I could then visualize for the general public so they could understand it. So we started using Domo with Save On Meats because it's the most complex of the businesses, right? It's balancing social impact, day-to-day business, 7 different cost centers, 4 different labor centers, a meal program, a commissary kitchen, a radio station.
Where we ended up with was delivering a dashboard that Mark can go on every day, and he can see everything that's happening right now in Save On Meats.
With the instance created of Domo, everybody's got the same data set. So we're all looking at the exact same information that's in real time and day to day.
With us being on the same page, it makes that part of the conversation much more concise and gives us the bandwidth and ability to look at the bigger project and the bigger scope of what we're trying to do by employing more people, feeding more people, and ultimately working towards ending homelessness.
The thing that really stuck out to me about Mark was that he was just starving for data. He knew that there was a lot of different data sets related to homelessness that existed out there, but he didn't have access to them.
If we can get the actual data from the real humans experiencing this problem, we no longer have any excuses.
What we're working on next with Mark is the PAL app.
I start to develop this passion project called PAL, or Positive Access Link. And the idea is that it is a platform that will aggregate services, opportunities, food, lodging, healthcare, all into one place. On the flip side of it, it's a gateway or an opportunity for all of the people who want to share their genius or their gifts, whether that be culinary or an accountant. We won't even go back and roll the rest of that. That is a teaser, so I ask you to keep that between us. That was 2/3 of the video. What it goes on to say and show is that people can also connect directly to each other and help each other out. One of the things that I learned most about being in those streets is that people are incredibly generous with each other and help each other out when they're in really terrible situations. And so how could we aggregate that so we can all be involved? This is what community looks like to me. It's incredibly important. This is our friend Football Mike, who now has an eye patch, which is also pretty great, but unfortunately he lost his eye. The guy in the center, his name is Justin Van Westen, and Justin was formerly street entrenched. He lived 7 years in the street and is now an advocate and an opioid overdose prevention guy. So the opioid crisis is killing a lot of people. In my neighborhood, we're almost at 3,000 in 2 years. So I've lost a lot of friends. Justin is out there literally every single day, hitting people in the chest and bringing them back to life. Isn't just affecting people who are street entrenched. Single moms are dying. Club kids are dying. It's incredible. So this is the core part of that. I'm going to go dark and I'll bring it back up, I promise. Isolation is the single biggest cause of addiction and instability. Us being disconnected, this loneliness that we feel, this is what I strive to do. This is, I think, the most important thing. Victoria and I were standing in the corner laughing earlier, and she's like, I'm so excited there's so many people here. I was like, are you surprised? I'm like, no, but it's so nice to see community gather. And you guys live in a smaller community, so you probably gather more. I ask kids when I work in schools, I'm like, hey, when was the last time somebody borrowed a cup of sugar from you? And they're like, nobody coming to my door. I'll call the cops. Like, I used to just walk in my neighbor's back door all the time and just go get something to eat. We no longer are there. We don't trust each other. So we work heavily to create community. This is an email from Justin. I do a dinner series. I'm going to go back so you don't start reading it because I wouldn't be able to help myself. We created this dinner series. So everybody comes to me and they're like, I really want to cook with you. Can I come chef with you? Can I come play chef? I'm like, do you know how to cook? And 9 times out of 10, they'd say, no. I'm like, how is that valuable to me? You're going to ruin my soup. You're going to cut your finger. All of this is a bad idea. What do you do? Be like, I'm a UX designer, but that's not useful. Like, have you seen a nonprofit website lately? Yeah, you're tremendously useful. Do what you're good at and help people out. And they're like, thanks. And about 6 months later, they come back and be like, hey, can I cook with you? So eventually we said yes. They're like, okay, fine. You can come, and this is corporate. You can come cook with us, but it's going to cost you $5,000 just to walk in the door. Number 2, you're going to have to buy all the groceries. Number 3, you're going to have to prep all the food. We're going to teach you how, and if you mess it up, you got to do it again. Number 4, you're then going to scrub up, print out some menus. 5, you're going to be the server for the night, all of you. We're going to invite 75 people from our community in who are either street entrenched or experiencing isolation. They're going to sit down. You're going to present them with menus. And you're going to take their order like we are in a Relais and Chateau Michelin star restaurant. You're going to respect them in their time. When they're done, you're going to scrub my entire place like you found it, and you're going to leave. Waiting for them to be like, no way. They're like, cool, when? It's like, God damn it. So we did 1. This snowballed into twice a week. This is snowballing into 3 times a week. We think that when people help, they want low friction. It's completely not the case. People want to feel in service. High friction events are the way to go if you're trying to do something. So Justin sends me a note. The event's called Plenty of Plates, and it says, hey, Mark, I just wanted to say thank you to your team for being absolutely amazing and supportive of the community. Thanks, Justin. That's nice. I'm working on looking at what it means to honor relationships for those in the community. Relationships are not honored, especially in our homeless population. I remember when Una, his wife, and I started our relationship and never had a date for the first 4 years because they were living street entrenched. So where I'm going with this is I have 3 couples coming to Plenty of Plates tonight, and this is a game changer for these people being honored in their relationship. So thank you so much for building the capacity and making the space in the community. Holy shit, what are you talking about? I was like, what? What do you? Obviously, why wouldn't I have thought of that before? Couples need a place to go have a date, no matter what your situation is. So they do. And they come, and we honor them in their relationships. And it's really, really important to us. Unintended consequences of what you create if you're doing it with the right intention, with the right community. If I had never let those people come cook, even though they don't know how, this wouldn't have been created. So you got to get out of your own way and your own ego. The only thing that stopped me from doing that was mine. I was like, I'm a chef, you're not. Remove that piece, everybody can play. And this happens. So I ask you to think about that when you're building systems and businesses and just looking after each other. I've got like 3 more hours I could do, but we're out of time. So I'm going to stop there. And thank you for having me. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Mark. Now, I'm sure there's quite a few questions in the group. Who'd like to ask a question? Here we go. I'll pass the microphone over. We do have people streaming online, so use the mic.
I'm just curious to know how you, from such a disadvantaged background, found the funding to buy the butcher shop initially.
Sure. So I didn't buy it. The building's owned by somebody else still, much to my dismay, and I pay almost a $20,000 rent. But I was up late at night with one of my friends. We'd never taken an investor before, ever. And I wouldn't do it because we're so high risk, right? And so I didn't ever want to have the conversation with somebody and be like, I lost your money. And the chances of that were very high. And I was sitting with a mate of mine who'd supported all of our businesses who had a little bit of money. And he said, you have to take this project. And what I was using as my excuse is I didn't have any money. And he said, I'm going to write you a check tomorrow. I was like, it's not going to be enough. We need about $2 million. He's like, I've done the math. You need about 300 grand to leverage that. I was like, cool. So where are we going to get that? He's like, I'm writing you a check. He wrote me a personal check with no contract and handed it to me and called my bluff. So I'm not sure whether to thank him. No, I love him. His name is Michael Emmett. Through the entire roller coaster of our business, he never once wavered. Everybody else jumped ship. Not everybody. Lots of people jumped ship, and he just stayed the course because he believed in the vision, and he believed in how important it was. And he's not like a trillionaire or anything. There's a lot of money to him. So that's how it happened.
Thank you very much. My name is Penny Scott. I'm really interested with your very second lesson, breathe. And how much time each day or during the day do you devote to simply meditating and breathing? And obviously there's so many ideas and opportunities that come to you through other ways. So if you can help me learn how you do that, I'd be most grateful.
Did anybody get here early? Thank you for the question. No, just the media folks. So I was laying down on that steel table over there, literally just breathing. Because we've been moving for 8 days, Vic, and we've done about 35 engagements, and they're all equally as important to me. You don't not show up. If people care enough to give you their time and attention and care about the work you do, you have to show up. And so there's one of two ways to go about it. You can show up exhausted, hungover, in ego, or you can show up and do the job. So I quit drinking 2 years ago, November 20th, not that I'm counting. God, I love to drink. I was so good at it. I was like the pro of pros for 25 years. But I couldn't do this job. And there's an indigenous and native belief that when you take in alcohol, you leave your body a little bit, which you do. That's kind of the point. You're like, I don't want to be around this bullshit for a second. Let me get a whiskey. But in the work that I do, you can't. You have to be 100% yourself all the time because trust is the impetus on which people build the relationships with you. So I'm constantly breathing, even though I haven't for the last 45 minutes. Because you got to pack a lot in. You got to talk fast. But I take those moments all the time, unapologetically. People think I'm crazy. We were doing some mentoring at the Sydney Startup Hub with all of these young, impressionable, amazing folks in 20-minute segments. And Victoria's counterpart, Alex, from the city of Sydney said, "Are you okay?" And I was like, googly-eyed. I was like, I just need to lay down for a second. So picture this, glass cubicles, and I just laid down on the floor. She's like, you can't just lay there. I'm like, I can lay I'm fine. And the next guy who came to get mentored was like, oh my God. He had his football Mike moment. I think he thought I was dead. But you have to. And it's just, when it's too much, you can feel it. And damage is done if you don't. And every single time, it's not maybe, damage is done. So you gotta look after yourself. Is that helpful? My pleasure.
So, Mark, I'm over here.
That freaked me out.
Sorry.
I don't know if you noticed that. What, are you doing your job over here? What, just creepily handing somebody the mic and standing away? I'm joking. Please, go ahead.
No worries. So I'm trying to understand. You had a lot of influences in your life. You had a lot of people kind of giving you guidance. Sorry, just to back up, I'm with the Wagga City Council. So I want to know, how do we create a community that supports innovation and social entrepreneurship like this? How does the community kind of get involved?
This is my counterpart, Victoria Moxley. She'll be happy to take your questions on Innovation Hub. No, I'm joking. You just have to do it, right? So find a space, the real estate agent that's willing to help you out, the people who care enough, the pet project. I've got 6 projects that I'm about to talk to that need space. Get your bottom of your cap rate met. Like, how do you build the business model? I'm just happy to share with you anytime. Because my diner and butcher shop is now no longer a diner and butcher shop. It's a 75-seat diner. It's a radio station at the front, a digital radio station. You can tune in anytime, saveonradio.com. It's fantastic. On the left side is a tasting room for my brewery, which is 11 Acre Farm Brewery. It's a satellite. It's also a vegan restaurant. So just to really thumb my nose at things, I took the 1957 butcher shop and started making vegan food. And we have an 1,800 square foot commissary kitchen in the back that services the 1,200 meals a day. We've done 2 million. At night, the diner, we had a drag show on Friday night. On Saturday night, we launched a magazine. There was 300 people in there. Last night, we had an indie band play a private concert and donate all their funds because I work really hard to build relationships. It's not about building that just general customer base. I need to know all of you because you're going to support me. So when you're creating an ecosystem, who really cares? It's easy to get the first checks because it's sexy, it's fun, it's easy, right? People be like, oh, I'll give 10K to that. 6 months down the track, when you go back, you're like, hey, so this hasn't worked just yet. That's a conversation you don't want to have. You want to make sure that the business case is built, that once that initial money's burnt, you're fine. And you're off and you're flying, right? Easy to say, more difficult to do, but make sure to find partners, especially as counsel with your leverage, to be like, hey, we'll help you, you help us. Is that helpful? Great. You paused. But thank you for letting me off the hook regardless.
Just wanted to give you notice.
I really appreciate that.
I don't know if I missed it. How did you get into food from where you were?
Started cooking when I was 9. One of my mentors, my Aunt Diane, passed 2 years ago. Bless her, rest her soul. She was a publican. She was a bartender. She was a chef. Never trained, like nobody trained her. Really quick, one step back. My mom's dad died when she was 12. 7 kids, all got shipped out to like cousins and uncles, etc., because my grandmother was bipolar and had an episode. So my aunt was the eldest and cooked for everybody. Like 0 money. They all went to work at like 12, 13 years old. And so I was in love with my aunt. Every time I would go to her house, she was just magnetic. Her energy was crazy. And so I'd be underfoot the whole time. And I'd watch her cook with a Manhattan in one hand and a cigarette in the other and stir with her teeth. I don't know how she did it. And she would cook for like 40, 50 people effortlessly. I'd be like, are you measuring that? And she'd just grab a handful of rock salt and like throw it in. Who am I lying? Sifto salt and throw it in. And it was incredible to me because everybody else I watched cook was like, oh shit. And she just didn't care. She was like, no, this is going to be delicious. And so I was infatuated. And so I started cooking at 9. At 12, I tried to get my first job cooking. They didn't give it to me, so I was a paper route guy. I had a growth spurt at 15. So carrying a paper route in Nova Scotia, I got those stories of like, there was this much snow, and I had to walk up 19 hills. But my first job in food, I was 14. I lied about my age, and I was a pizza cook. So a Lebanese family let me cook at the mall. So being from a small town, I feel like you know the importance of the mall to a teenage boy. Add pizza cook to that. I was the man. I was like, oh my God, I'm never not cooking. This is the greatest thing ever. But truthfully also, I was like, I can make magic out of flour and water. The second you bake your first dough, where's my baker at? She's here somewhere. There she is. The second you bake your first product and people lose their mind, you're like, this is so easy, don't tell anybody. So then I went on to have a career. I worked here in Australia, so at 19, I was working at a place on Chapel Street as a prep cook, dishwasher mainly, but prep cook. And then I followed that passion on the Great Ocean Road, worked in Lorne, worked in a lot of hotels and restaurants in Melbourne, and then decided I should be a DJ because that's where the real money was. And so I DJ'd in the inception of the Australian hip-hop scene in Melbourne for 7 years. That has nothing to do with your question, but I'm telling you anyway, because I felt like it. My best friend in the world is named Matt Lambert. He's also known as Suffa from the Hilltop Hoods. Bliss and Esso are my other best mates. The only person that's friends with both sides. But that was my time that I spent in Melbourne. And it's exactly the same work I do now, which is I believed in something really, really deeply. When somebody rapped about the hood in Sydney and getting bashed as a graph artist, I was like, that's the story. Don't talk about Brooklyn. You're not from there. And so we would talk in rap circles all the time and work in production and do tours. We'd play local pubs to 30 people. Nobody would come out except the old guys at the bar would tell us to shut up. And I still now tour with the Hoods when we do North America, and I've watched them sell out 30,000 person stadiums. It's a dream, adherence to said dream, 25 years of work, not 6 months, not a year, never gave up and towed that line. So that also is really infectious to me about this is what dedication looks like. And I like Australian people a lot. Compliments will get me everywhere.
I'm really interested in the data stuff. I'm a startup. I've done accelerating program with Investival. I know you were with my coaches on the weekend.
I sure was.
I'm really passionate about disability and mental health services, and it's a goal-setting platform for people with disabilities to have coaches with common interests, like Chef with a Chef. But what I'm really passionate about and what you spoke about is the data stuff and showing services that every community is different and every community's needs are different and funding goes in the same. And I just want to know, how did you have impact on having that data on the way that service delivery went into the communities, and did they make changes with that?
Yes, but I want to tell you a different story. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. Because the answer is yes. If you sit with these guys and go, we have 37 people who are homeless, 14 of them are women, they're under 20, we need a female-only shelter, we need services for it, I've designated a building, I think all we need is about $240,000 and some change to do programming for 2 years, they're going to say yes. But when you say we have a homeless issue, well, shit, we have a rodent issue too. I mean, what do you want me to do about it? If you can't tell me what the issue actually is definably, how can I expect, and I'm not letting you off the hook in any way, shape, or form, but like with my municipal council, I went at my mayor head on and was like, people are dying. You have to fix this. And he's like, I don't know how, because I don't know what's going on. I was like, that's the first honest thing you've ever said to me. That's not true at all. But you get in this situation where if you don't have the data, why is everything government's fault, first of all? It can't be. We're a community. We should be looking after ourselves. We have to look after ourselves. And pre-war, we did. My grandparents looked after everybody, and vice versa. There's a drought. Your farm next to it. I got you. Don't worry about it. We didn't immediately march into an office and go, hey, I'm kind of screwed up. So if we can balance both of those things, we're in an incredible space. But the only way to do it is to know what we're talking about. You wouldn't expect to get an investment if you didn't know how many users you had. Right? Like you have to have data. So that's really important to me. Can I tell one more quick story? You sure? Okay. I got really worked up right then. I tend to do that. So I went to Stanford University. Is everybody familiar with Stanford? Okay. Anyway, Stanford's like the hoity-toity. There's 3 archetypes of people that go there. They basically come out of the womb pegged to go to Stanford. It's the best school in North America. I got asked to go there to do a fellowship program around civic innovation. And I took that 9 months very sacredly. I had to leave my companies for the first time ever and go on the road. And to do so, I hired my father. My dad had just retired. He ran a business in Perth for 25 years. He was looking forward to retirement until I called him. I was like, "G'day, mate. How's it going?" He was like, "Fine, what do you want?" I was like, "Look, here's the thing. I got an opportunity. I need you to sit in my seat at my company." He was like, "I'm absolutely not doing that. You're a lunatic. Your company's crazy. We're not doing this thing." And I was like, "I got a fellowship to Stanford." He's like, "I'll be there in a month." So he came because I have high school education. And he sat in my seat and he did the thing, which allowed me to go do real research. So I spent 9 months in the Mission and Tenderloin district, much like the downtown east side, doing what's known as ethnography, talking to people. And I would sit down with somebody for 2 hours and be like, "Tell me about you." And it would be uncomfortable like that. And I wouldn't fill the space. until they would start to speak. And I would just listen and I'd be like, tell me more about that. And they would tell me more. And by the end of the 2 hours, I learned a lot about the situation that people were in. So I designed a prototype based on that to prove out the thing I showed you. And it was a McDonald's Happy Meal box. There's just the white label ones you can buy, like a craft box. And I put a sign-up sheet in the local mission in Palo Alto, and it said, I will communicate with you for 1 week, 3 times a day. And then if you respond, it was better than this, I swear, I'll give you a $50 gift certificate to Walgreens or Rexall. And I was hoping to get a couple of people. It was filled on both sides. And so I got to go through and pick all the different people. I was like, formerly veteran, paraplegic, man living with daughters in van, woman who's a former sex worker, all the way across the board. And I brought them to a town hall just like this, and I was so excited. I was like, I can't believe people have showed up. This is crazy. Because you're out on a limb, right? And I put my little McDonald's box down, and I was like, all right, this is what's in here. We got some socks. Everybody needs socks who's living rough. Got some Swedish fish and some gummy bears, important. Waterproof pen, waterproof pads, smartphone, and an activation package for the smartphone. This is what I think is the key item on Christmas Day, right? Woman in the front immediately looks up and goes, I got an iPhone 6, I'm good. I was like, right, cool, you're fine. Guy's like, I got a Samsung. Every single person had a smartphone because there's a thing in America that I didn't know about until that moment, because research, if you make less than $17,000, you get a free smartphone and data plan. It's called Lifeline or Obama phone, named after the only good president we can remember. Now, I started sending messages because I wanted to see if people would respond. And my understanding was they probably wouldn't. Technology might be a little weird, etc. 98% participation rate all the way through the week. 18 people. The first message I sent was, tell me about somebody who makes you proud and why. Not dissimilar to what I did here this morning. I got so many selfies. I got incredible things. But on the Thursday, the first message I sent was, tell me about a skill you wish you could use more. Not a job you once had, not what somebody says you're good at. A skill you wish you could use more. The wording was super important, and the first message I got back was, I wish I was still a translator. And I'm like, tinfoil hat translator? Like, what are we talking about? Is it alien? Like, so I texted back and was like, can you meet me for coffee? Met for coffee the next day. The woman's name was Jen. She graduated from the University of Southern California with a master's degree in linguistics. She wanted to work in the music industry when she was a teenager, studied German and Swiss because that's where all the acts were coming out. Got a job with Warner Music, dream job. Addicted to heroin, street and trench worker for 13 years. Dad gets sick, goes back to Palo Alto to help him out, gets her life together. She's working sweeping the streets for a $20 stipend a week, just to get her resume built back up. Beautiful woman. I'm like, how do we get you translating again? So I'm just, you know what? We're at Stanford. There's foreign students everywhere. Somebody's got to know German to English and need German to English. Let's do a postering campaign. So we got with her social service worker, and we did some research. And we did a postering campaign in Palo Alto. It was like, translator available, $35 an hour, minimum engagement 10 hours. $55 was going rate, minimum. So that's a steal, screaming steal. Next Thursday, she had a full-time contract. $20 stipend, full-time contract. We sat down, I was like, you're making more than my stipend at Stanford now. I believe, she believes, narrative's different. Nobody knows her history except her. So as long as we believe, that's all it is. And there's all these skills and all these needs. How do we do it? Data. I just said that word at the end of the story to try and tie it back in. Did it work? Did it work? Word up. Okay, guys, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks, Mark. Really good. We'll wrap up now. There is a Lucky Door prize, and it's stuck under somebody's seat. So if I could just ask you to have a look under your seat. It's a very kind gift from the team at Food I Am, Tanya, and it's one of the cooking classes. Have we found it? There we go. Congratulations. Very good. We're about to break for lunch. A few very, very quick. To Mark, that was inspirational, absolutely fantastic to hear from you. Thank you to Victoria Moxie and Alex Curtis from the City of Sydney, to Erin Gale and the team at the Sydney School of Entrepreneurship, and Tanya and the great team at Food I Am, and of course Annette and Siobhan from Charles Sturt University for bringing this event to us all. Thank you. Have a great lunch and look forward to meeting you.